Today, we are having the opportunity to hear from experts from every lens about the importance of AI literacy and their learning experiences. It is imperative that we learn together and explore AI literacy as a driver of economic mobility and human flourishing. So let's take a look at our agenda today. We will be talking about a multitude of things, hearing from our panel of experts in the areas where they excel, kicking things off with AI in play and early experiences, transitioning then into work and economic mobility for young people, and then talking about the practical perspective of AI on the ground, and then looking ahead to the future, the AI century study. And again, we will have time at the end of our session for some Q&A. All right, well, let's get things started. We are going to be focusing again about understanding and using and evaluating AI systems. That's why we have experts from so many areas to share with us today. And our goal is to explore the importance of AI literacy, like I said, across economic mobility and human flourishing across the world. Let's introduce our panelists now. Our first guest is a literal force of nature in the world of science education. Kieran Hoffman is the president and CEO of National Children's Museum, a physical chemist by training. Kieran has a career that spans from curating the work of Nobel laureates to leading $15 million fiscal turnaround at the New York Academy of Sciences. Today, she's helping us understand how AI literacy starts not with a screen, but with curiosity and the unplugged exploration of a child. Good morning and welcome, Kieran.
Thank you so much, Jessica.
You're welcome. All right, our next guest in a world that's obsessed with 24 hours of AI news, our next speaker is looking at the next 100 years. Dr. Joey Wilson is a managing director at AIR, where he leads the organization's overarching AI strategy. With a background that hits the trifecta of engineering, education, and public health, Dr. Wilson is the mind behind the AI Century study. He's here to help us ground our discussion in real evidence and the future of human condition. Welcome, Dr. Joey Wilson.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Of course. All right, next, we have a leader who knows exactly where policy meets the pavement. Julie Lammers is the president and CEO of BriteBound. With over 15 years at the helm of student advocacy and a decade of experience as a congressional aide to Senator Ted Kennedy, Julie understands how to build pathways for young people. Today, she's joining us to explain why AI literacy is the essential secret sauce for career-connected experiences for, like, Futurescape by BriteBound. Welcome, Julie Lammers.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Happy to have you. And finally, we're joined by a leader who makes technology actually work for thousands of students every single day. Ginny Ambrosius is the Director of Technology for CESA 8. She serves as the strategic bridge for 27 school districts, turning complex tech operations into innovative and instructional solutions. If you want to know how AI literacy moves from a good idea in a boardroom to a daily reality in a classroom, Ginny is the expert you need to hear from. We're happy to have you here, Ginny.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right, we are going to kick things off with a little rapid fire question game for our panelists. Audience, those attending, if you want to join in the chat, feel free to do so. But please share the first word that comes to mind when I say AI literacy. And Julie, we're going to start with you.
Thank you. I'm going to say essential.
Essential. Wonderful. Thank you. All right, same question to you, Joey. What is the first word that comes to mind when you hear AI literacy?
Journey.
Journey. Very good. Thank you. And Jenny, to you, first word that comes to mind when you hear AI literacy?
Empowerment.
Thank you. And last but not least, Kieran, please share with us the first word that comes to your mind.
Discernment.
Discernment. Awesome. Well, I love the fact that we had different responses from each of you. We will circle back to what you actually mean with those one words a little bit later in the end of the webinar. All right, let's kick things off with our panelists and their expertise. So we're going to start the conversation by focusing on our youngest learners. Kieran, how is the National Children's Museum thinking about AI literacy?
Thank you so much for asking. It's such a pleasure to be here today to have to be a part of this conversation. And just to kind of anchor you in what is the National Children's Museum and why do we have a perspective about AI literacy, I just wanted to introduce everybody to our work. We are a children's museum and science center located right in the heart of Washington, D.C. Our mission for the last 52 years has been to inspire children to care about and change the world. We serve children from 0 to 12 and their families and educators. And we have visitors from 225,000 visitors a year from all 50 states, every ward in DC, and 75 countries around the world on a regular basis. So we really have vast reach and diverse visitors who are engaging with issues around learning and play. So if you go to the next slide, I want to give you a sense of the ways in which we think about our educational philosophy. First, is everything is rooted in play. Children don't have to be here. We get them here because they want to be here because it's really fun. And while we have them, we have a philosophy around education and guided learning where we really want them to be focused on open-ended exploration, creativity, critical thinking. We want them to be saying things as they're playing and tinkering, things like, I made the same mistake again, but now I know how to fix it. Or I don't know what it is yet. I'm still figuring it out. Or I didn't know that clear bottles had shadows. I want to try. I want to keep working. I want to push further. And then this final one, I did it. I did something I didn't think I could do, or I persisted and I succeeded. So that's the foundation from which we begin to think about engaging learners with complicated topics around technology and society more broadly. In 1980, we actually had the first public computer lab on the East Coast and one of the first in the country. So we had computers for children to come and tinker and play and type and begin to understand coding. And they were sitting down side by side with congressional staffers because they didn't have computers either. So we've always tried to be at this intersection of technology and society and learning. And so now, the most important thing we can be focused on are the AI technologies that are so present for children and families in their worlds, whether they like it or not. So if you go to the next slide, in September, we gathered a group of educators and technology leaders, museum professionals, policymakers, early learning specialists, and child developmental psychologist specialists to have a conversation around how can we make AI education engaging, accessible, and developmentally appropriate for young learners? And so we had a really important conversation, not about what do we think about AI per se, but how do we make sure that technologies that children are encountering are clear to them that they're technologies, that they're not magic, or that they're not a friend, right? That when they're engaging with chatbots, that they know this is a chatbot, and what does that mean? How do you demystify that, and how do you empower them to engage in a healthy way, and then help them explore some important ideas around machine learning and probabilistic thinking and large language models, so they can really demystify and discern what's happening behind the hood, so that they can begin to see themselves as responsible users and also creators and innovators and leaders that can be creating the next set of technologies. So we had this really important event. Coming out of that event, if you go to the next slide, we are beginning a project that we're calling AI Unplugged. For very young children. And so this starts with the basis that we believe that children have the right to learn about the technologies that are impacting their futures, not only their futures, but their presents. And so we want to make these ideas really accessible and engaging. And for us, that means fun. And so we are working with a consortium of children's museums from around the country, as well as researchers and child developmental specialists to create a set of hands-on, developmentally appropriate exhibits and experiences at children's museums that children can be introduced to these core components of AI literacy and computational thinking so that they can engage and ask questions and begin to contend with the technologies that are already that they're already engaging with, whether they even realize it or not.
That is incredible. You guys are doing some amazing work at the Children's Museum, and I think the opportunity to kind of, like you touched on, demystify the idea around these technologies and A lot of families are maybe confused, but also nervous about how they're kind of taking over the world right now. And this hands-on approach, making it engaging and fun, is such a great way for families to kind of feel less nervous about AI as it comes into our society more and more.
Yep.
So we appreciate the work that you all are doing at the National Children's Museum. If you all have specific questions for Kieran as it relates to the work they're doing, feel free to drop it in the Q&A, and we can address it at the end of our hearing from all of our panelists. But Kieran, one last question, and if you don't mind, you're working on this AI Unplugged right now. What is kind of the goal that you will see? Not like in 30 days, but maybe by the end of 2026. And what is kind of a takeaway that you would love to have parents and families walk away with after the end of the year and their perspective of AI with this unplugged approach to the technologies?
Yeah, so what's really important to us is to get families talking with their children about AI. We find that research has shown that the more that families are talking about it and being direct about these conversations, asking their children questions, asking their children what do they think about these concepts, the more that children are able to discern and able to know what the difference is between an AI or magic. So there's research coming out of Harvard that if children are talking about it at home and then they're presented with a chatbot, right now, if they're not talking about it, 60% of the children have no idea whether it's a human or a robot. If the families are talking about it, they begin to see patterns and say, "Oh, okay, and actually, I know the difference now. I'm able to discern and say that's a chatbot. That's a a computer, and here are some of the probabilistic um, prompts behind or probability distributions behind that. This is machine learning. It sounds like it's a person, but it's not, and they're able to begin to think more critically. So we want to have those conversations started at the museum, and we also want to make sure that they are um, technologically accurate, that the kids aren't just getting, a lot of what we're working with is in metaphor to some degree, but we want to make sure that the kids are getting accurate representations of what these technologies look like and what the underlying concepts are. And we want to make sure that they're playful and fun and hands-on. So once we've established that, and also developmentally appropriate, we want to be able to create these experiences and essentially clone them across the country so that in every community, at every children's museum in the country, a child can walk in and have a similar experience where the parents can be assured that they are accurate and developmentally appropriate and fun and engaging, and where children are going to learn about these really important concepts.
That is so imperative. And as a parent of a 9 and 12-year-old, right in the midst of all of this, I appreciate the work and the insight that your team is providing. Thank you, Kieran, so much. Let's shift from talking about our youngsters a little bit in terms of the play side. We're gonna shift now into the actual school experience, those K-12 school experiences. So, Julie, can you describe the importance of early access to career readiness learning for young people and the effect that this emerging technology is having on the entire process?
Yeah, thank you so much. And so I think it's interesting the transition from the play into school, because unfortunately we have uh, sort of bifurcated those two things. And I think one of the things that we are really focused on is how can we put more discovery, more exploration into some of the things that kids are doing on a regular basis in K-12 so that they better understand themselves and their future possibilities. So I am the president and CEO of BriteBound. We are a national nonprofit that focuses on career readiness issues. And one of our goals is really to make sure that young people have a much longer runway to think about what they want for themselves in their future so that they can pick post-secondary education and career opportunities based on things they have experienced themselves and had time to actually explore. And so we think it's really important for young people to have opportunities to think about their own passions, what they're good at, what the world needs, what they can get paid for, no later than eighth grade, because we see that kids start to foreclose opportunities for themselves if they haven't experienced something by eighth grade. So from a career exploration standpoint, AI is a wonderful tool to help kids start to be able to uncover some of the career opportunities that might not be prevalent in their local community. And so we see it as a wonderful opportunity to really expand those exploration activities. We see great strides being made in things like virtual job experiences, virtual reality experiences that give kids opportunity to understand what careers may be that they don't necessarily see themselves. And so those exploration activities are really, really important. As kids move a little bit older, we think the opportunities for AI really are in some actual tactical skill building, right? So we have some experiences on our website. We have digital tools that we provide free for young people, and there are experiences there around, AI-driven job interview skills. One of our partners, Get Schooled, had created this great tool around job interview skills, and we were seeing kids coming back over and over to do some of these activities. And we actually reached out to them and asked why. We wanted to know if it was really them continuously coming back. And one young man had taken this job interview experience probably 24 times, and we wanted to know why that was. His concern was he had never interviewed for anything before. He wanted this internship. He was very nervous about it. And talking to the AI interviewee was much more comfortable for him as he built those skills. They could tell him exactly what he needed to do differently, how he needed to approach questions in a different way. And it alleviated his concerns and his nervousness to do it in an AI tool rather than in front of someone. And by the point he had done it 20 or so times, he was then comfortable to move on to a real human. So we see great opportunity as kids are trying to build skills to help them be career ready, that there is a really great chance for AI to augment some of those experiences. Now, they don't replace in-person experiences at all, but there are opportunities for basic skill building that kids may not be getting in other ways. And so we think it's really critically important then to help young people find ways to continue to build the durable skills. Some of the things that you saw in kids doing in the play spaces at the Children's Museum around critical thinking. How do I learn from mistakes I just made and do it differently? Communication skills. All of the things that we know employers are saying they need are still vitally important to have in-person communication and in-person experiences to really develop. We focus on opportunities for work-based learning and other career-connected experiential learning in order for kids to augment the skills they've built in AI with real world experiences. So that's the way we are thinking about the tools that are being built around AI. It really is critically important for them to expand opportunity around exploration, as well as some really hands-on skill building in order to make sure kids have what they need going forward. I will say, however, the other area of this work that we're really looking at is if we fundamentally believe that entry-level jobs will be changed by AI, then we need to make sure every young person has the skills they need to navigate AI successfully. And we're concerned about digital divides that are already starting to develop because school systems are managing AI literacy differently. So that's something as a nonprofit we are very focused on, making sure that all young people have access to AI skills so that they can be equipped for jobs of the future. And so, that is a big focus of our work as well.
Well, that was you must have dug into my brain and pulled out the next question, because I know you hit on some very important skill sets that employers are looking for: communication and adaptability. But I feel like a lot of employers nowadays, in their job descriptions, they want someone who is AI literate, and building these AI skills at such a young age in a safe and controlled environment is so key. Can you dive in a little bit more on kind of how developing those skills intertwines with still maintaining the importance of human relationships? I know
Yeah.
interview process is fantastic. I love that tool. But it took multiple times for him to then feel comfortable in front of a human. So how do we maintain the human aspect of everything?
Yes, and so I think that's why we say these AI skill building opportunities have to be linked to something real, some real hands-on career readiness experience, because we know that durable human skills will be what sets kids apart. If everyone can use AI to a certain degree to do the basics of a job, then what will set kids apart when it comes to an internship or a first job is how they communicate and how they can work in teams, how they can discern information. All of those aspects of those really durable human skills will be what is needed. And so we need to simultaneously find opportunities for kids to build those skills in real world experiences, so that they are prepared to meet the needs of employers going forward.
Wonderful. And that's a great, you said these are geared toward the older students, but you did reference, you start this at the middle school grade level. And I know days of the past, we had Career Day where people from all different fields, that kind of sparks the interest. How can a student then take what they may learn from Career Day and use tools like your Futurescapes where they can kind of figure out on their own what they may want?
Yeah, so I think it starts with lots of conversations much earlier than we have historically done, and it's not just one day of career exposure. It is constantly asking young people, what they want to be in the world. How can we help them get there? And helping them think differently at a much earlier age about that exposure. As they move into high school, then how are we thinking about how do you hone those interests into something that that will lead to a career path? And so giving them tools to delve into a variety of different opportunities. They just because they have a strong interest in science doesn't necessarily mean they need to be a doctor. So how are we using AI tools to say, if you have a strong interest in science, here are a myriad of options that you should explore, and how does that then meet needs of how are you thinking about your in-school education, what your internship experience might be. There's a variety of factors that will go into helping you discern that, but it is really trying to set kids on a path of thinking differently about what their opportunities are so that they're not limited, and giving them a set of career paths that they should start to explore. And so the tools that we have created that are free, Futurescape, Future Network are two of them, help young people do that. They give them a map of, if you're interested in one thing, here is a wide array of things that might be possible for you that we can then help you explore further through digital tools or by talking to a mentor or someone in your community that might have experienced it. So it needs to be both. It needs to be that online activity as well as in-person interaction.
I definitely agree. It's a great way to at least get the conversation started by engaging them with a platform that they enjoy, which is it's digitally, whether we like it or not as parents and adults now. Thank you, Julie, so much. And this is a perfect transition to go from the work that you're doing at BriteBound into talking what's actually happening in the classrooms. So, Jenny, with your work at CESA 8, you're taking all of this, you're grounding us in the practice. What are you all doing, and what are you seeing in terms of AI actually being used to support innovative teaching and innovative learning in the school districts in Wisconsin?
Yeah, well, before I dive into how we're seeing it, I think I have to jump back into that empowerment, right? Shared empowerment was my word at the beginning. And we were working hard to empower and build capacity among staff that then transcends into our classrooms. So in Wisconsin, we're really fortunate. We have some great resources and pillars for that work at the state and local levels. So for example, in Wisconsin, we have a Wisconsin AI guidance document, which can certainly be, there we go, linked in the chat. And this was developed by a group of teachers across the state, librarians, administrators, and guided by our Department of Public Instruction, so that we have a pillar of what is AI and how can I use this safely. And it sets a framework for schools to then build on. We also have a really great network of all of our CESAs. So in Wisconsin, we have 12 educational service agencies, and we call them CESAs. And that's that map there. So I'm in CESA 8, which is the green in the top right. But we all come together. We have representation across the state. We meet about once a month, or we talk about instructional technology. And you can imagine the instructional technology over the last few years have been really heavy on AI conversations. And the power in that is that we build and problem solve for things that are happening across the state. And then we build professional learning. We talk about how do we support guidelines and policies and building intentional use of AI in classrooms. So with that, we're building capacity through professional learning, building AI guidelines, and then at the local level, I'm thinking just CESA 8, right? We, this year, in partnership with EdSafe AI, worked to publish our first AI guideline for our service agency. And this comes back to that empowerment, because if I don't know what my guardrails are of what AI is and what AI is not, and what safe use looks like, what are safe tools, where's my data going, I might not be intentionally using it for innovative ways or being able to really use it successfully in the classroom. So that guideline was a lot of support for us here at CESA 8. We continue to work to support districts with community discussions. We provide workshops, and I'm often invited in to do professional learning to build staff capacity and modeling how they can bring that to their classroom. So there's my foundation. I'm coming to your questions. If you go to the next slide, that guideline and those pillars of support really help set up our expectations. And the reason that's important is then it gives staff, like confidence in what I'm bringing into the classroom. And that's going to look different across the board. So I was an elementary teacher before I worked my way into this career. But at that elementary level, a lot of times that starts out by looking at modeling and bringing in tools to support engagement, or maybe I'm using it to build efficiency in my work. But if I'm thinking about modeling, one example that I've heard is using Notebook LM to have that interactive feature, right? I have my guardrails. I know what I'm the adult using this, but think about how fun it is as a kid to be asking those questions to an interactive AI. And as a teacher, I'm modeling. I think it was Julie said it, like, or maybe everybody so far, knowing that that's not a real person, right? I can be saying as we're having the conversation, now this is exciting, right? But that's a computer coming up with those examples. That's not a person. So from there, I am using this to build engagement, and I'm also building AI literacy for my students and building that language about what that looks like. Now, as we progress and go into like that secondary learning, our middle school, high schools, I've had a lot of conversations about shifting the thought about assessment. So, for example, writing is often, in English, is often the one that we have a lot of conversation about, because in past, I could say write an essay, right? And we would take days over time to write an essay, go through the writing process. Well, now, like you mentioned, there's some digital equity gaps, and some students can put it into AI, and some are just getting a response, and they're able to get an essay directly from an artificial intelligence tool. So I say that because now we're shifting that practice and building awareness about the process, right? We're not just giving kids a calculator to finish the work. We're talking about process over product. So my conversation is shifting to maybe, how did you use AI to support your research? What tools did you use to come up with these ideas? How did you edit this piece of writing? So process over product, and that modeling from staff. So we're building capacity and empowering our schools and our students. And it also comes to those community conversations, like I mentioned in that first slide. We build data and bring data in from our community as far as parent concerns and what do they need. So when a district brings me in to support with their AI guidance, we ask those parents and families, what are your concerns? And then we build guidance and AI literacy roadmaps to address concerns and help build capacity. And often it's worrying about the human loss, right? I heard that a few times today too, like, am I losing the human element of this? And that's why we emphasize that human in the loop, like those modeling in the elementary classrooms. That's not a person talking to you, right? That's a computer. You're the person giving it direction. So we're seeing it, this innovative application across the board. But outside of just the classroom level, we're seeing support with data analysis as well. And we're seeing like administration using AI to build efficiency so they can also be more present in their work too. So thinking about workflows and availability of staff. So across the board, there's great application, but really that foundation is building the skills and the guardrails with a guideline and professional learning, building capacity. So that's what we're seeing here in Wisconsin.
One thing that you mentioned I think is so vital is the kids are using the tools, so there's no way around that, but you're having those open and honest conversations and approaching it. How did you use it? Talk a little bit about what the response is from kids when teachers are saying, well, we know you use, are they defensive or is there an open conversation? It's brought up and it's, considered, yes, we're using it, but this is how we're using it and why we're using it.
Yeah, so that looks very different depending on the district, right? I will say if you are a district that has an AI guideline in place and you've called out what student acceptable use is of AI, it's much easier to have those conversations because you could go back to that guideline and say, hey, I asked when you use AI that you need to cite it. Did you use that here? Did you forget a citation? We're also looking at tools and having conversations with students about process. So sometimes we're using things like Brisk to talk through, like, oh, I can see you're editing on this document. It looks like you copied and pasted. And that brings us to a conversation about AI literacy and saying, okay, here's when it's okay and here's when it's not. So I do think that there is some defensiveness, more so if you don't have a guideline or you don't know what your expectations are. But if you know your expectations and you know what's expected of use of AI in your district and what you can use and how you could build and to use that to increase your innovation and to build your efficiency, then it's a lot more of an easier conversation. And I think it strengthens those relationships and it shows we can go a lot farther with this yet. There's a lot more here.
I agree. Having those existing policies in place definitely sets the conversation that AI can be an opportunity and not a cheat tool. So I think that's great. I think another element is for the teachers, they have a whole new level of recognizing like when they are looking and grading papers, how do you look for what may be AI and what might be true writing? Because there are some AI tools that look they're
No.
very genuine depending on what the prompt is. So talk about the professional development opportunities that teachers have and what you all are doing to help them recognize AI.
Yeah, so sometimes like writing is often the biggest one. A lot of times when I'm leading professional learning, we call out cheating because it's always on people's mind, right? This is just something that's going to increase more cheating. And actually, a lot of the staff I work with say, well, after we talk about it, AI doesn't create more cheating. There's always an opportunity to cheat there. But now when I have conversations and I have to change the way I'm assessing. So with writing, sometimes that looks like doing shorter assignments in class to talk about that process, right? So today we're not using our computers, that unplugged idea, right? But we're going to talk about the process. And then I introduce, here's where you can go to AI to support your research, right? So clear guidelines, changing assessment practices. That slide before I showed, we have 12 CESAs. That's part of our work right now is supporting assessment practices so that we can be more innovative and address this growing application of AI in our schools. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity there for us to learn yet, but having the guidance in place really helps those conversations.
Thank you so much, Jenny. And I think it is an ever evolving learning process, which kind of segues into what we're looking at in the future, where Joey, you come in. From what you've heard about AI literacy and all of the stages of life, especially in the realms of education, can you kind of build the bridge for us on what you're doing at AIR to understand how it's shaping human development, opportunity, and involvement in our society? And then let's touch on that 100-year study that you're working on too.
Sure. Thank you. Um, so my name's Joey. I work at the American Institutes for Research. For those who don't know, we call it AIR, not AIR. We're a nonpartisan nonprofit research organization, and our bread and butter is generating evidence on education, health, workforce, and international development. We've been around for about 80 years. And our whole goal is to follow the evidence. We follow the evidence for problems where for matters that in people's lives, and increasingly right now that means understanding better what AI's effect is on humans and society itself is super important. And we do this in the short term and in the long term. And I think before I talk about this century study, I just wanted to mention this other body of work that I think is so interesting and connected to what Kieran was talking about. Um, we have this NSF, National Science Foundation funded project called AI by 8, so AI by the age of 8. And it is focused on helping K through 2 teachers um, learn about AI and teach AI in an unplugged way using English language arts instruction. So teachers have so many different things that they're asked to do in any given day. And so if we can create a way for teachers to understand or to teach about AI, not with AI, about AI and the foundational concepts, that's something that has been really exciting. So we work closely with North Carolina State University on this, and we have a set of we call them AI by 8 fellows, who are K through 2 teachers in North Carolina right now, and they're co-constructing lessons that are really like their English language arts first, and then we connect them to this other set of foundational AI ideas from another National Science Foundation funded project called AI for K-12. And they break AI into 5 big components. So one is perception, one is representation and reasoning, one is learning, one is natural interaction, and a really important one is societal impact. And I think what's so cool about that is it's giving teachers an opportunity to see, oh, I can use storytelling to teach my students about foundational concepts of AI. And I think that that's so connected to what Kieran is talking about with building experiences in play that students can engage in to learn about AI and to start talking about it. So that's kind of the short term piece of it, where we're building evidence around what's working with teachers and potentially with students. But one of the things that we also do at AIR is we do really long term studies. And so one thing that we were thinking about, there's so much noise that is out there right now. There's so much hype about what AI can do, what it can't do, how it's affecting society, how students are learning, what's the attention gap that people have. And it's hard to figure out what is true and what isn't. And you can't do that in a short-term study. You can't do that in 1 year to understand how this affects society. And so we decided over the last year, we were brainstorming different ways that we could say, hey, what can we do that's in service of building evidence for society? And we came up with this idea of an AI century study. And so most research on AI really only captures these short-term snapshots. And really, this is designed to take a super long-term view, at long term, 100 years. It's called the century study because it is over 100 years and it's a nationally representative sample of children and families in the US. And so the idea is we're trying to get a cross section across the United States to understand the experience of starting with AI native children right now, what their experiences are in school, work, and life, and track this over time and across generations. And so we know that some of these changes, we were talking about them on here already. They're going to be really large and visible, like automation of some jobs. Heard some conversation about AI interviewers and like preparing for that. Like that's something I've never had to do when I was applying for jobs. But it's part of the experience that this new generation is going to have to grapple with. Other changes are going to be harder to detect. They're cognitive or behavioral shifts that emerge gradually as AI becomes a part of just our routine experience. And so this study is designed to look at both these really big, large, and visible changes, but then also these harder to detect effects. And so we're going to be looking at how AI shapes cognition and learning, health and well-being, skills and work trajectories, civic engagement, and long-term opportunity. And we say the first generation of AI native children. And what we mean is, we're thinking, when would that start? And we view kind of the turning point as the year that Chat GPT became super popular. And so that's sort of where we're starting when we say AI native children. This is a 100-year study, and this means that evidence is going to be generated over a long period of time, but we don't want to wait to get information out 100 years from now. I won't be around in 100 years, or at least I don't think I will, unless there's some rapid change in technology. So the way we're approaching this is as we build out and recruit participants in the study, we'll be sharing regularly the results so that people can understand what we're learning along the way. And I think that's what's really cool about it, is to have this long-term view and to be able to say, okay, we started with this group of young children right now, and to be able to say, what does this look like over a century? And what does it look like for some of their families? What are the experiences that they have? Um, we're not setting this up to like evaluate a specific program or single AI tool or product. It is meant to look at AI as the technology and how there's this interplay between the technology itself and as society develops. So really it's organized around this one big question of how does AI change the human condition? It's a big question, and we don't have the answers. We're not claiming we know what the answers are, but we really think that there's going to be changes in how we learn, how we work, how we feel, how we participate in society. We feel that now. Like we feel that now, just watching the news cycle, watching new products come out, and feeling like the ground is shifting but beneath our feet. And we want to be able to start to build an evidence base that is both in the short term and in the long term. And so if you go to this AI Century Study website, AR.org, AI Century Study was a short little video, and then you can also like sign up for more information for follow-ups with it.
It sounds very intriguing, and who knows, Joey, you may still be here in 100 years to see the results of this study. And you sort of answered this. I was going to ask, with it being 100 years, obviously we don't want to just wait and hold on to this evidence. You mentioned in one of the bullets here that it's to inform policy and practice. Is there an opportunity where any evidence that's gathered, if a policy is up for discussion, that you may have evidence that's gathered that you will go ahead and release as it relates to a certain policy? What would that process look like as bits and pieces are being gathered to influence real-time policy and practices?
That ultimately is the goal of this, is to really at least every single year, as we get more data from this first cohort of young children, what this looks like and what the experiences of their parents are, and start to put this out into the world in digestible bits of information, because so much research gets out there and it's hard to digest. So the idea is to try to package it up in ways that are understandable, to say, oh, this is the experience for the parents of these students that are right now, and then in 5 years this is the experience that they're having. And we're seeing that maybe there's changes in how much screen time students are having, and what is the effect that this has on their participation in extracurricular activities. I'm throwing out an idea. We don't know, but at the core of it is we're a behavioral and social science firm, and we're not saying that AI will do one thing versus another. This is really meant to be open and generative and try to really understand the broad set of changes that will happen at both the micro level within an individual student and across an entire society.
I love it. This is going to be so informative. And I agree that having something that extends beyond we're doing a 1 year study, like, because this gives an opportunity to track the trends and the progress that AI is making literally on a week to week basis. So this is really incredible. Okay, I want to circle back to the one words that you all gave at the beginning. But before I do that, if you're for those of us participating and watching, if you guys will drop in what, after listening to everything, maybe your one word that you had in your mind at the beginning of the panel has changed. I want to know, what do our audience, what do you all think? One word, when I say the word AI literacy, what comes to mind? And while you're dropping those in, let's circle back, and I'm going to just say your word and see if you remember who said the word, and you tell me a little bit more about it. So the word is essential.
That was
Julie.
me. Yes, I think despite not having the AIR evidence yet, we know that the world will be changed by AI, and we want to make sure that young people have the skills they need to thrive in the future economy. as employers think differently about how they're delivering service, how they're building their own tools, how they're working internally. And we really need to make sure that young people have the skills necessary to thrive in that economy. And so for us, it's really about how are we making sure young people can think about both the durable human skills they need to build as well as the essential AI skills in order to really succeed long term in careers that they are interested in. We don't necessarily know what those careers will be, but they need to also have the ability to pivot and change as AI changes the working world. And so the ability to try something new, to pivot their choices and their direction is a skill in and of itself that I think will be driven largely by AI. And so that's why we think it is so essential for kids to begin to build those skills as early as possible.
It is, in fact, essential. Very good. Thank you so much, Julie. Okay, next word, empowerment.
Oh, that's me. So empowerment aligns with my view on AI literacy because in the schools, a big part of our goal is students are leaving our schools to be career and community ready, and they need to be empowered. Just like we're talking community ready with or career ready with Julie, they need to be empowered with the skills to do that. Well, our staff needs to be empowered with that too. So building a lot of my work again, AI guidelines, building in there. How are we building in AI literacy to build those skills for our staff to model and teach our students? We're empowering the community to support that. So empowerment.
Love it. Thank you so much. All right, next we had journey.
That was me. I chose Journey because I was thinking about just where we're at right now, and it feels like it's the start of society's journey in grappling with what AI is. And we know it's a part of early childhood. It's starting to be, and we know that it's happening to adults right now in their current career, and it's happening to people in their old age. I'm visiting my mom later today, and she talks to me about how she uses Copilot to whenever she has questions about health, and I have to sometimes be like, okay, let's talk about that. Let me see how to figure. Let's see how you're using it. But it's happening now, and I think the journey that exists is a learning journey for all of us and understanding what that means, like really understanding and grappling with it, and it's starting to build evidence that we can see over the long term is something that's so important. And so we're just beginning. And I think having like all these different partners on here too, it's so exciting because it's together is the way that I feel that this journey is happening.
I love that. And the one that I'm most intrigued to hear about is discernment from Kieran.
That's me. When I think about discernment, we want kids to be curious. We want them to be skeptical. We want them to thoughtfully engage with everything they're engaging with. So in this case, it's technology that they're already encountering. They may not even realize they're encountering it, but we want them to think about these experiences and be discerning and begin to think about, what is it? What's at the root of when I ask Siri to play a song? How does that work? And how does it know which song I want and which artist I want? And why does it recognize my mom's voice but not mine? And we really want them to begin asking those questions so that they can thoughtfully engage. They can begin to put their own sense of guardrails and so that they can have their own sense of power. And ultimately, they could be the ones creating these future tools.
I love that. Yes, that is great. Um, and my daughter has a voice that sounds very much like mine, so she's able to get my phone to do things that she should not. So I will say that. All right, we have a question in our Q&A box, so I'm going to pop this out there. And Julie, this one is directed to you. Do the AI-driven career path tools that you discuss include trade work?
Yes, I think many of them do. I think there's a lot we need to do to develop a robust suite of these tools. I don't think they're universally accessed yet. And there's a lot more I think we need to do to make sure that every profession is highlighted well. But the tools that we are building at BriteBound certainly do. They highlight a diversity of post-secondary education options, first of all, that they're not all four-year degree types that young people need to go to in order to on their journey to a career, but also a diversity of career options that really fit into sort of the four areas that we focus on when we think about middle school is what do you love, what are you good at, what does the world need, and what can you get paid for? And in the middle of those four things are a variety of careers that will be right for any young person to explore. And it's not just one option, but really trying to think about what is that diversity of options. So yes, there are definitely trade type activities that are included in that, and many, many others as well.
And that's an important thing to think about. When we think of career day, it's not just your, doctor, lawyer, teacher. So exploring the trades and incorporating AI, because AI is used in a lot of these trades these days now as well. So Kieran and Joey, you all sort of answered this in your conversation already about looking ahead to the future. We talked about what will National Children's Museum AI Unplugged look like by the end of the year. Joey, you're looking at 100 years out. So Jenny, let me ask you, fast forward to 2027, or National AI Literacy Day next year. What do you think AI will look like just a year from now? And how do you think it will have expanded or even maybe retracted? Which direction do you think it will be for your school district?
I wish I had a crystal ball because I feel like it will look very different depending on the district, right? A lot of our work looks like meeting a district where they're at, knowing that our goal is to support AI so we don't have those digital gaps. But with that, I think we're going to see more of the calling out of what does AI look like for kindergarten through second grade? What does AI look like for third through fifth grade? And I know we're doing a lot of that work in Wisconsin. We have some work groups working on that at a state level, so that it can be applied at the local school level. So I think it continues to grow. And I think we continue to look at data to see how we need to change things, right? When, I keep saying AI guidelines, that's probably, you've heard me say it probably like 20 times here. But when we look at that, we use that as an evolving model. So we're going to continue to look at data of what is our community telling us they need, what are our students and staff telling us we need, and that's how we'll be changing things to meet them where they're at. So continuous learning, we're going to continue to look at the data, and we're going to continue to see how we can meet student needs to make sure they're ready to go beyond our school walls.
I think some of the data that comes out from Joey's 100-year study will definitely impact a lot of the work that we are all doing. I think the links that were dropped in during your discussions are also very helpful. The guidelines that Jenny referenced were dropped in the chat, and then the AI by 8 that AIR is doing, as well as their AI for K-12. Both of those links are in the chat as well. So some really helpful resources there. I appreciate everyone and your time. We've got about 5 minutes left. So if you all, as our panelists, want to come off mute, maybe one at a time, or all at once, we can talk on top of each other. No, I'm just kidding. What is your takeaway from hearing from your colleagues today, as far as something that they may have said that might influence the work that you're doing, or be a conversation piece that you want to take back and share with your colleagues? And rather than everyone talking on top, we'll start with Kieran.
I'm just so appreciative listening to this conversation that there are these bridges between informal learning, play-based experiences like the National Children's Museum to schools and formal learning experiences to the research that's happening in and around schools and family experiences. So it gives me great comfort to know that these conversations are happening and that they're not happening in isolation, but that if we can all work in connection with one another, we can really create a paradigm for children to learn in developmentally appropriate ways with the appropriate guardrails, so that they can be AI literate in their experiences.
Thank you so much. Joey, you want to chime in?
Sure. I was struck by how Jenny talked about the work she does within in her role of interacting with parents and engaging so many teachers and family. That's like such an important part of this because we're all trying to figure it out. And I think being able to bring people to the table to have an open conversation about what are you hearing? What are you feeling? What scares you? What excites you? To be able to have that honest discussion it demonstrates to children, hey, we don't have to have all the answers, but we can talk about this together. And I think if adults can start to do this, I'm just struck by the engaging with family and communities directly is the thing that I think is so important um, for uh, for ongoing AI literacy.
I definitely agree. Julie, what's your takeaway from today?
I just continuously thinking about how we not only learn about AI skills, but learn about how to use AI appropriately and how we're talking to kids about that. Because I think I think discernment was a perfect word that you used, Kieran, that it really is trying to think about how am I building skills that will help me be more efficient and work better in a future world, but also that I have the ability to understand how to appropriately use this tool and when. And that is going to be a piece that I think Jenny's probably struggling with in her school district all the time and having conversations with teachers about, but that employers will be grappling with as well. So I think that piece of it that we have to learn not only about the skills, but how to appropriately use it is ongoing conversations that we all need to be having with young people.
I agree. It's one thing to know it, but to implement it is another level of skills. And Jenny, you want to wrap us up with your insights from your colleagues today?
Yeah, I think it's really insightful to hear a lot of the same thoughts that we have across the board of human centered. It's not just AI as a technology tool, but it's the skills that we're using, like the problem solving. If I don't get the right response, how am I reacting to that and adjusting? So even though we're using a technology, I need to have those human skills to make this work for me. So that is what's really sitting with me, and I'm very interested to connect with all of you outside of this as well.
Wonderful. Well, we really appreciate you all taking time from your very busy schedules. We're going to pop up a quick poll on the screen for our panelists and our audience to go ahead and take this poll and be honest with your responses. Seeing the results coming in, I'm glad to see that we have folks that feel more engaged and more literate on AI literacy. So that's exciting. Got about 10 more seconds. We'll leave this up. Waiting for a few more to respond. We have 10 out of our 22 panelists. Doesn't give names, so I won't call anyone out here. All right, as this is wrapping up with this quiz right here, feel free to share that you participated in this webinar on any of your social media channels. And if you do, tag National AI Literacy Day in the post that you do. We will be sharing this webinar on our AI Literacy Day website in our asynchronous PD section. So it'll be available for folks to go back and watch. Also accessible on our YouTube page, the EdSafe AI Alliance YouTube account. So we appreciate everyone joining us today. Thank you so much again to our panelists for taking time out of the busy day to be here. And we hope you all have a wonderful National AI Literacy Day on Friday.
Thanks,
Thank
Sean. Have
you.
a good day.
Thank you guys.